year-end unaudited balance update and FY19 start snapshot. So I believe
Amy's here
Ms.
to
Haferman.
So tonight we're going to talk about everybody's favorite things, finance. So I just prepared a little snapshot. It's very estimated data on fiscal year 18 and then a quick look into fiscal year 19. So our favorite time of the year is coming up. The auditors will be in our office next Tuesday and Thursday, October 2nd and 4th. When I presented the revised budget, we projected the district to overexpend by $348,000. At this time, I don't believe that's going to be the case. And please keep in mind that a revised budget was just that. It was a projection of revenues and expenditures that were projected to happen. And so this is very preliminary data. So when I did the projected revenue, I felt it was better to have the numbers out there and have the projections out there than to have surprises at year end. So some of the key facts to keep in mind. As of the fiscal year 2018 ADMs, we had 1827.91, and that included 15.27 tuition in students. When I did the revenue projection, we projected 1825. So as of today, revenues received to date are an estimated $200,000 over what was originally projected. That number also includes an entry that we have to make for the TRA and PERA pension for GASB 68, and that amount this year was $65,000. The district also received more in special ed dollars, probably about an estimated $100,000 more than what was projected. This is due to the changing in the funding formula. And as I've said time and time again, I will always be conservative when budgeting special ed dollars because I don't know where they're going to come in and it can change at any time. And another thing that I'm doing, I'm maximizing our federal special ed aid, meaning we're not carrying over as much and I'm using more for benefits chargeback, which is something that a lot of districts do with their federal special ed dollars. So what that means is that's cash right into the district because once we expend it, we can get that money. Here are some key factors of the expenditures. So as of right now, our invoices, the majority of the 2018 invoices have been paid. I'm really kind of ready to cut it off, and if there's a few stragglers, we'll deal with it, but otherwise we're pretty certain we're pretty much done. The salaries and benefits that were projected came in at 99%. The expenditures did not meet the projected amount due to we cut off the spending of instructional budgets in April. So that left a lot. I mean, I think there was maybe $58,000 that wasn't spent in that area. And then there were also some LTFM projects that were not completed by June 30th, so those LTFM dollars just carry over, as will those projects. Again, these numbers are just very preliminary, but I wanted you to have just a little bit of an update. There are still auditing entries that need to be done. And right now, the unassigned fund balance is unknown, but when the adopted budget was done in fiscal year 2018, the unassigned fund balance was projected to be about $1,805,000. And as of today, I'm hoping to have it around $1.8 million. That's after everything is said and done.
And when we did the revised budget this spring,
yes,
our unassigned fund balance was projected to drop to
1.6.
1.6. So just to give you a picture that a couple $100,000 better than what we projected.
And a lot of that has to do with the revenue stream. So now, just a quick look into fiscal year 19.
Before we do that, are there any questions about fiscal 18?
Can you scroll back up, Matt?
Sure.
One more. One more. So if I'm reading that correctly, that's around a $300,000 to the good there in those, the third and fourth bullet, right?
Almost, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And we're still, I mean, with 1.8 million, we're still not quite, we're not really where we want to be in terms of our fund balance. So I just want to make sure that people understand that,
Right.
yes, this is good, but we still are trying to increase our fund balance
Yeah, I
because
mean,
in case of emergency.
We're not at
Without,
12%.
yeah, without doing a quick, a precise calculation, I think we want to be around 2.2, 2.3 million.
Mhm.
Yep.
So we're going in the right direction though.
We are,
Yes.
definitely.
Good.
Is this right?
There. So, looking ahead into fiscal year 2019, so when I did the adopted budget, I estimated 1,853 ADMs, and that include 10 tuition students. Well, as you all know, enrollment increased, so at the beginning of the school year, we were at around 1903, and that includes 19 ECSE students and an estimated 13 tuition students, which is about a 78 student increase from 2017-18. The total number of students open enrolled to Jordan is 193 students. And so when I work on the revised budget, if the enrollment doesn't change a lot, I will do the revised budget at about 1,900 students, and that will include the 10 tuition students. So, an increase in enrollment also equals an increase in revenue. With a projection of 1,900 ADMs, so the increase in state aid, both restricted and unrestricted, will be about $375,000, and of that, $330,000 will be in the unassigned fund balance. And also, if we increase enrollment, we'll probably have to increase expenditures. So since 2018, there's been many staffing changes, probably due to teachers being non-renewed, resignations not refilled, and new hires. The majority of our staffing changes are due to shifting of staff and resignations. But overall, throughout the district, we had a teaching staff increase of 2.86 FTEs. And the next slide shows just a brief computation of the salaries and how that affects it. So we added an SLD teacher, and that's coded 100% to special ed. We added a kindergarten teacher and a .66 middle school art teacher. So the staffing changes and resignations, we had an art/industrial tech teacher resigned. His salary is shown, and also he had an overload, so we replaced that with a .6. We hired one FTE for industrial tech and then the .66 FTE for the art. We also had a JMS social worker resigned, and that was only a .8 salary, so we hired a 1.0 guidance counselor, and 20% of that will be coded to special ed. So overall staffing changes is about $129,000. So again, these numbers are only estimates, and they're more than likely going to change. I will begin working on the revised budget after the audit has been completed, and we will always monitor enrollment and change that on that monthly sheet. And we hope to have a better projected of fiscal year 19 salaries for the October 22nd board session using the 5CAS model.
Quick
Questions?
question. You said 300K was unassigned, so that'll go back to the general fund, so we're getting closer to that 12% in 19.
Well, those are just revenues. That's not necessarily all the extra expenditures that we
So,
have completed.
just really quick, if you take 303,000,
Yep.
subtract 129,000,
Yep.
that's current picture.
Okay.
So what is that, 170,000 to
Yeah.
the good at this point?
Yep.
But we're also gonna be talking about some additions
Yep.
too, so.
Mhm.
It's fair.
Other questions for Amy?
So just that we're now getting more students in, it still doesn't necessarily mean that our fund balance is growing.
No,
No.
with that additional revenue coming in.
It just depends on where they come
Mhm.
and what we want to do as priorities for a district. I mean, one of the things that I think we need to really look at, and we'll talk about tonight, starting now, is, you know, what do we want to be? Who do we, you know, we've had these conversations before, and it's getting harder and harder to maintain what we have. I think it's important to note that. If you drive around many events tonight, there's a ton of stuff going on. So facility maintenance is really important. We are pretty short on custodial staff. We have 10 district-wide. We'd like to add at least one to provide some assistance, sort of an outside grounds to help with the outside, the one full-time outside grounds person we have, but also shift them and do some plowing work, some salting work in the winter, and also treat them as just more of a full-time floating sub. So that's one additional staff, and you're going to hear from the principals and from Chad as special services director about some additional help that's needed in special ed. And our class sizes at the secondary level are higher than they were last year for certain, if you look overall big picture. But I think it's important also to remember that we made our priority to keep elementary as close to what we've historically seen as possible. I don't, you know, when we get into the staffing piece, and we'll talk about that then, but I don't see a red flag. They're higher than we typically have been, but they're not out of line with what other school districts have. And I'll just go back to this. When we have $724 per pupil as an operating levy, that is the bare minimum. That's what every school district is eligible for. You can't do a whole lot of extras. It doesn't matter what your enrollment is. We are a very efficient school district financially, and I think it's just becoming more difficult to maintain that level with what we have for our operating. I think that's, I have to say it. I can't just sit here and not say it and pretend that it's going to get better, because you know, we can have all the enrollment in the world and we can maintain what we have. It just depends on what we want to be going forward.
Am I reading this correctly, though? From last year, we're up 2.86 FTEs from last year.
Yes.
So we brought in, what was it, 78 students, and we've increased staff so far year to date 2.86. That's what the problem there is it's not all ads in the same grade, right? It's spread
Right.
across the
Yes.
district, and that's where the challenges come into play.
And as Matt said, it depends upon special ed students. I think those numbers have increased.
Right.
And that plays a big part of it.
Yeah.
How
And of those special ed staff, we only get reimbursed 68%.
What was the number for
Salary.
special ed that was added? Sorry, I'm
41
41.
additional students when we get to that sheet.
We've added one special ed teacher.
One full-time, yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you. Good job, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, enrollment and class size updates. I call the principals and Mr. Williams up.
We'll start with the elementary. Mrs. Barnett, excuse me, Mrs. Barnett will lead us through that sheet.
Good evening, board members.
Hello.
Good evening.
So as you can see here in my executive summary, what I did is I included enrollment for 17 and 18 and compared it to where we're at this year in 18-19. I do have some additional information on just how things compare to the Metro SU data too as well. If you'd like, I can share that with you too. As you look at grade levels, and you know, I just would go across here, we're pretty close to where we were last year in total enrollment. We're down about 10 students compared to last year. As you look across, as we were getting students enrolled this upcoming fall. Like to your point, Jesse, they were kind of all over the board. They did land in second grade primarily, which is what caused us to make an additional shift in a staff member back to second grade. And then we also saw increases in our kindergarten population. What's kind of interesting to note is as you go kind of at a diagonal and just see where our grade levels were from last year in kindergarten, now where they are in first grade, where they were in first grade to second, second to third, third to fourth, we've seen increases in compared to last year. And in those increases, what I noted at the bottom, which you were talking already about the increase in the population of our students. We're seeing more students coming in that are not only open enrolled, but just new families to Jordan in general that have significant academic and social emotional needs. So for us at the elementary, we've been working a lot with Chad Williams to be able to make sure that we're staffed and we have the resources to support those students and families. So that's what that paragraph addresses here at the bottom. In comparison to the Metro SU study that was shared, we're probably a few weeks out from submitting data for next year's study. But this recent study that they sent out in the spring, so if you look at the data up above, the Metro SU for kindergarten, Jordan ranks fourth at a 19.31 class average, which is right where we're at this year for 18-19. For first grade, we were at fourth within the region at 20.2. Once again, almost right in that same boat this year. Second grade, we were 22nd in ranking in our region with 23.8. So we're sitting below that. Before we added that fifth section, we were looking at numbers of 27 in second grade. For third grade, the Metro had an average of Jordan had an average of 24.33, which was 19th, which we are above that in third grade this year. This year we're at 25.4. And then in fourth grade last year, we averaged 24.5, which was 9th in the region. And this year we're slightly above that once again at 25.6. So to Matt's point, we have chosen to keep our class sizes lower in our primary grades. While we get up to the intermediate, they've increased in comparison to last year. Any questions?
I just have one kind of on your last sentence there, which I think is relevant. You know, is there additional need for staffing to support kind of these new students and to give them adequate care?
Yes, I think it comes in a number of different shapes and forms. Our classroom teachers need to continue to have training and professional development and resources at their fingertips. Some of that comes from new dollars and new programming, but many of it comes from what we currently have and making it better to best meet those needs, whether it's with paraprofessional support, special ed, RTI,
Right.
Enrichment. So I think at this point, like you said, Jesse, to your point, it's good to note because along with getting a certain population of students comes the resources that we need to meet the needs of those kids.
Right.
And also their families.
Right.
We have a lot of families that need support too. So our social worker, our school psychologist, myself, the rest of the admin team, we're supporting those families as well. We've had probably more students than since I've been here that are in outside treatment facilities, getting mental health help. which is surprising at such a young age, but it is happening. And so those families need help with how they transfer back into the school system and what that means for them.
Melissa, can you touch on languages too? Like languages?
Yes. This school year in kindergarten, we have 5 Russian-speaking students. 2 is their primary home language, so they don't speak any English, which is great for our students to have that diverse population. However, it adds to, once again, what the teachers need to support those students, what the families need, that reassurance coming into a building where their child doesn't have English as their primary language, our EL staff, and leaning on them and helping support those families.
But even from a district communication standpoint, or trying some different resources out on how we can translate, it's just something that we're not used to in Jordan. I mean, it happens everywhere, or a lot of places, but we haven't seen it. We're starting to see more of it.
The Minnesota Department of Ed offers us a resource. Chad Williams was able to attend a webinar on it. It's called Transact. It allows us to take all of our school forms and to have them translated into multiple languages, so that the forms that we're sending home, whether it's free and reduced lunch, discipline, referrals, any information going out on title services, it's in their home language. By law, that's what we're required to do. The other thing is, when I send out a communication, like my video, I now have to do it in closed caption, because we also have a family who's deaf and hard of hearing, which once again is a great asset to our school district and to our students, but we just have to be more mindful of that communication.
And that's a free service from MDE? The
Yes.
translation piece, wonderful.
It is, but if we do anything that's specific to our district, then there are
Okay.
fees,
Okay.
which
So-
we just have to do it.
Chad's looking at that. He's working with our administrative assistants, and they've collected all of our forms specific to Jordan, and to see what the quote would be for those forms to be translated. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any more questions for Melissa? Okay.
All right, good evening. Well, that pulls up. Just a couple things. The scheduling process from a middle school and high school standpoint really starts with our retreat, where we start brainstorming and kind of dreaming, like Matt talked about, who we want to be. And then in March, we really ramp it up with our registration and building the master schedule. So when we built the master schedule, or started building it, Rose Branson is here. She's doing her administrative internship. She does a fantastic job. So she and I and Todd Knutson built the master schedule together this year. We invited any staff that were wanting to gain that experience to be a part of it. So in March, when we started doing that, we were at 605 students projected for this school year. Today, we're at 636. So that creates some dynamics when building a schedule. And I chuckled when Jesse said, you know, they probably don't all come in, you know, well dispersed. That's very true. This year, they happen to come in 5th grade. So that's why when you look at the class sizes, 5th grade took a jump. So if we were going to look at addressing an issue, that's where we would do it. And Rose and I talked about this, you know, addressing that in some way. That would be an area 2nd semester that we will look at. But there's lots of dynamics when you start messing with the schedule at this stage of the game. So we've talked about a lot of different options. But just jumping into the class size comparisons, so all the way to your left is the Metro class size study. And that's a compilation of, it's called junior high. So all of the grades 5 through 8, they lump them together. And then that gives you your averages for your class size. For that, so that's for last year. And it's important to note that that information is taken from the fall. So there you'll see some different slight discrepancies between the class size and and our actual numbers. And that's because the class size study was submitted in the fall, and the data that we took was spring when we were building our schedule. So there's just a little bit of nuance there. So you can see that as you go through the different content areas, what you'll see consistently is that 5th grade is a bit higher. We projected, we planned to be higher, we planned for an increase, but when we had that many students enroll, it's a great problem, but it just increased our class sizes there. We could have went back to the drawing board and redid our master schedule a 3rd time, but we thought that families would not appreciate that, you know, right before school started changing it a 3rd time. Because when we had the late resignation and we added the art and industrial tech, that forced us to make a change to the master schedule after they were released on Infinite Campus, but not before open house. We just had a big wave of increase. We actually had another 5th grader enroll today. So,
Really?
I don't know if you knew that yet or not. But but what I will say is our 5th grade team has been fantastic. They've just said, you know what? We're gonna do the best job that we can do for the kids, and they are. I mean, they have a can-do attitude that's just amazing, and I do not feel like our kids are getting shortchanged at all. They're getting a great service. So you can see as you go through the different content areas, a couple changes that we did make. We were going to make them regardless because of the research that we did of our own performance. And then just as we looked at just research outside, we had 2 intervention classes that quite honestly weren't being successful. Our students weren't making progress, so we changed how we were doing those. So that led to an increase in the social studies. What was happening was our lowest performing students in the area of reading, they were being pulled out of their social studies class, and they were getting an alternative social studies / reading intervention class. Wonderful person doing it. She's gone down to the Winona area. Heather Murphy was her name. She did a fantastic job. She was a trained social studies teacher doing a reading intervention class. So that was a change we were going to make. She chose to move to where her fiance is. So it was great for her, and it provided an opportunity for us to revamp and relook at that intervention class. So when you look at social studies, that's why you see an increase. Those kids, what that means though, is they're back in the social studies class, but they're being supported through the MTSS model. So they get their core instruction, and then we're intervening with Leah Weber, who moved from the elementary, and they are getting reading support and intervention through our Tier 2 classes, so group intervention, and then also individualized intervention. So it follows research-based practices in the MTSS model. So we're excited about that, and having that up and rolling. And then also in the area of math, we had, in 2 grade levels, we had an additional section of math where we pulled all of our lowest performing math students, put them together, and taught them separate from their core. When I looked at the research and Carol looked at the research and the data, those students weren't making progress. So we're putting them back in because those kids have quite frankly, they have the right to get solid Tier 1 instruction from the teacher who knows the content best, and then we're intervening. So Tracy Mullenbach is doing the exact same thing on the math side that I just talked about from the reading side. But that's why you see an increase in some of the math classes. But it is best practice. So that's where that's at. But you can see, and I won't go through all of the numbers, but we have a bubble. It's important to point out too with our 7th grade. So our current numbers as of Friday, 6th grade or 5th grade is at 161, and then 5th grade is at 161, 6th grade is at 130. 7th grade is 187. And then 8th grade is at 158. So you can see that there's a low bubble and a high bubble coming through, and they're back to back. So it just creates some scheduling opportunities for creativity. So we'll continue to problem solve that and solve that issue as it goes through. Any questions as we go through? Our exploratory and elective classes are higher this year, but that's because of the priority, especially in 5th and 6th grade, of wanting our teachers to have chunks of time with kids so that when they choose to, they have all of the 5th graders or all of the 6th graders together so they can do the project-based learning activities that they do a wonderful job of. The Showcase of Learning in 5th grade or the Minnesota History Day in 6th grade. One of the hiccups we continually ran into is they would have 30 of their kids that would go to an exploratory class, so they didn't have a consistent time to be able to connect with kids. So, but what that means, that was a priority, so it impacted specifically Phi Ed in 5th grade, but that's going fine. Any questions from there?
Questions for Ben? Thank you.
Hey Ben, I just gotta let you know that you answered every question I had up there. I didn't even have to ask you a question.
I read your mind.
I think you did.
No pressure, John.
What's that?
No pressure.
After those two talk, I know you guys are done with listening to numbers, so I usually just come up here and a little song and dance and make you laugh. See? Thank you. And Ben hit on a lot of the same things that I talked to, or I'm going to hit on some of the same things that Ben talked about. One of the objectives last spring was looking at increasing our class sizes, and we did that. And in the same mold, I think we are about 27 new students over what we had projected. And so it leads to some classes being bigger. Much the same way, again, it's not like they're all in the 12th grade class or the 10th grade class. And what we also run into is, as we've had a lot of open enrollment, which is good, they're coming from other districts, and so they might be a 10th grade student who would be taking American history for us, but they have taken world history, or they've already taken American history as a 9th grader, so they come to us and they don't need that, so then we need to put them in civics, which has a big number. So there's just some interesting dynamics that come with that. Overall, just I'll kind of highlight a few of the nuances here, and I put it in my notes too. In English, all 9th grade students take English 9. There's the option of honors or regular English. 10th grade, same deal. All students take English 10. It's either honors or regular. Grade 11 and 12, they have to take 4 semesters of English, and there are different categories that those fall into, including some writing and some speech and then some electives. And so those numbers kind of bounce around, and those have both juniors and seniors in. So if you go to the college writing class, you'll see both seniors and juniors in those classes. The other nuance throughout our schedule that you'll see is that we graduated a class of 103, much like Ben is talking about this bubble coming up. Well, we graduated 103 and have about 155, 160 in the senior class this year. So just what looks like our numbers are going up a lot are really just the nuances of our students. So it's just those tricky little things that'll come up. And our grade 11 class is smaller again. They're at about 140. So there's just some of those bounces that come with that. So math, similar also. All 98% of our students take geometry as 9th graders. Grade 10, they start to separate advanced algebra and then algebra 2A, advanced algebra 2 or algebra 2A. Grade 11, they actually can go into about 4 different math classes, and by grade 12, it kind of pares itself back down. They've got about 3 or 4 options. So those numbers bounce around a lot because students start to thin out. You know, some students might be taking CIS Calc, some might be taking CIS Algebra, some might be taking pre-calc. I mean, they could be all over the map in what kind of math classes they're taking. If you scroll up a little bit, Matt. Social studies, same idea. Grade 9, all of them take civics. Grade 10, U.S. history. Grade 11, world history. So those are pretty easy numbers for us to manage. And then in grade 12, they all take econ, and then there's options. They have about 4 or 5 different social studies electives that they can take. And because the electives, again, they get spread out, and those numbers shrink a little bit in that category. Science, we see that our science numbers probably have the greatest diversity, because there's just so many options when they get to grade 12. In grade 11, they can start to take more science classes too. Grade 9, take regular science. Grade 10, regular science. Grade 11, they take either applied chem or chemistry. And then in grade 12, they have a plethora of options there. So, any questions so far on just the core classes? All right. And you'll see, for most part, our averages in class sizes have gone up. We have had some class sizes that are, some individual class sizes that are pretty big. And much like Ben did, I give a shout out to Tony Rydberg. He has 40 kids in his lit class, and he's taken over the union for that class. And he's been just doing great things with that union. Has just worked out perfectly with the seating arrangements and the way he can do things in there. And so he's been just a trooper in getting that to work for their classes. So, and that's just, there's only one section of it, and so many kids chose it, and we didn't want to say no. And he didn't want to say no to kids that want to be in the lit class, so we let them all be in there. And then in our electives, you'll see that numbers have actually, art has gone down just a little bit. Industrial ed has gone up quite a bit because we have Mr. McClellan all day, and we've been able to offer more classes, and more kids are in those classes. And I mean, I don't want to read it all to you, but you can just see they've stayed pretty steady. World language is a little bit lower, and that's because we're now offering Spanish 4 and Spanish 5, which are both lower number college credit bearing classes. And so hopefully with the students that have taken it through middle school on up, we'll continue that growth through, and we'll have bigger numbers in our Spanish 4 and Spanish 5 moving forward. And those are just ones. We have some of those classes we don't have to offer, but we would lose those students if we didn't offer our Spanish 5 anymore. They would go to Normandale, or they'd go PSEO. FIAD numbers are up, kind of same thing as Ben. We've just added more students into the classes, and health ed stays pretty steady because it's just generally 5 sections, 150 kids per grade. So, questions on what we're doing there?
Any questions? I was just wondering about music. I mean, if you had any.
You know, I should put music in there. We have 4 sections of choir. Once the band's gone from when Mr. Burnside started, it was about 54, and we are at huge. 92 students.
It's the largest ever, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
And it's interesting because he and I have had conversations about what we would do in the future, you know, or what he would like to do, and it's a real conundrum because do you go to 2? How do you divide those? Do you do a tryout, or do you do a 9-10 band and an 11-12, or like I said, do you do an 8-9 band because he teaches the 8th grade, and you bring the 8th graders over, or whatever way you want to do it, and you do something like that because the 8th grade also performs at their concert. So what if you brought the 8th and 9th grade together and formed that band, and then you had your varsity band or whatever you want to call it with your older students. So he's in the process of thinking through that because there's not much more room for chairs. And that does lead to a thing we've met with Amy before about finance too, because as we add more students, they don't all come. Students don't come with their own set of percussion instruments, so as we get more percussionists, it's needing to buy some more equipment. So, yeah. But music numbers are outstanding. I mean, they're both good. We've added that 4th choir, and has good numbers. And I just talked to Miss McKnight today, and she thinks that choir is it's an all-girls choir that's kind of an in-between group, and she loves them and loves what they're doing and the things they're able to do. So it's going well.
Maybe we ought to add orchestra.
That would be. Is that in the budget?
I think what we're seeing is, just for everybody, we've been in the optimal size for a few years, and now growth is great. We want it, but we're going to see, we're almost at that tipping point, because you add more staff, you can see what would happen. If you add, you're going to drop down to 15, 16, 17 kids in cores. You don't operate financially very well that small, and that's kind of how it was 5, 6 years ago. We were struggling to get to 20 kids, you know, with our threshold. So it's just a really interesting. I mean, even if you look at athletics and the arts, we're at that cusp. We're like, we're going to jump to that next class here in the next cycle, most likely, and you know, we're in that sweet spot right now, I guess I would call it. So it's, as all three of the principals shared, it's sort of like a interesting dynamics.
Well, and then when you know, when we go to a class of 170 or 80 to 120, I mean, that's a, I don't know, Ben, what is that, probably a half-time teacher? I mean, on average, you know? I think the other thing that we'll eventually look at is we share staff. We don't share staff in the core at all. It's all in electives. I think by next year, we could probably be looking at sharing core teachers. You know, that we have a science and a math and a social studies, maybe not social studies, but English that's traveling and teaching a little bit of both middle school and high school in the core areas. I think that's a possibility.
Jeff and I have talked about that. It certainly isn't ideal sharing staff because, you know, he does this week is, you know, kind of chalk it up to it is what it is, but this is a crazy week. And so, you know, in order to get full-time people, that's the best, you know, to share the positions, but
we might not be at the point where we're both at 0.5s or 1.0s each, you know, but we're also not at zeros either.
And that's, I mean, the 5th grade piece, that's, I mean, that's a reality where it is, in order to maintain the priority that we have of having that chunk of time, well, it's, you can't have a 5th grade teacher take those additional sections. So then you get into, do you look at the rest of the schedule and pull people, and then it's kind of a hodgepodge of people being part of the 5th grade team, which isn't ideal in your transition year. So, but that's, then you have a, let's say Jeff has a need, then you have someone teaching 5th grade and high school, and that's, you know, licensure-wise, that would work.
If they had, if they had a 512.
Yep.
If they had a 512.
Is it fair to say, especially at the high school level, and you know, was a high school principal, but we're trying to honor as many elective classes that kids want to take as possible. So what typically, and Jeff, you can say yes or no to this, what typically ends up happening is your core is, you're going to get conflicts. You know, we're at what, 5, 6 sections of 4, 5, 6 sections, somewhere in there.
Yes, 5 or 6.
Yeah, you're going to end up with some conflicts in there where they conflict with one of their elective choices. So that's why you see that. I mean, you look just specifically at like, well, just pick anything. 11th grade science, 22 to 29. That range exists because you're trying to accommodate kids' choice.
Yeah. And that's why, and those aren't bad, that's the small class. I mean, that's why in grade 10, Mr. Bonik has 36 in some of his social studies. You know, or Mr. Olson, because in 36 when, let's say, what would it be, you know, when there's boys choir or girls choir in the morning, and everybody else is, you know, then we cut down on the number of sections. When there's hub and chorus in the morning, then we cut down on the number of other classes we offer because 40 of them are, you know, it's just unique dynamics. Then you go in their room, there's, you know, it's 22 girls and 3 boys or whatever.
And, you know, and some schools say, no, we got to balance this. You have to take, you know, this. And they drop, you know, you have to take your core and you can't take this elective. And we've chosen, for the most part, I mean, every once in a while you run into something where it's unavoidable, but for the most part we try to honor those choices.
And our summit classes have added to that challenge at times too. You know, because when you take kids for 2 hours of the day, or the Southwest Metro options, I mean, those just are, they're great opportunities for kids, but they also pigeonhole them in. But I know that one of the things we did, and the reason math is a little bit lower, is part of our conversation with Mr. Casterton is he is doing he's doing a split mastery of math, but he's also allowing them to go at their own pace. So students are moving at their own pace. It's individualized, and he's kind of the one trying this out for everybody, or the test pilot for this. And so we allowed them to have a little bit smaller classes to try that. And we don't have honors anymore because they're able to move at their own pace. And so that really helped us in scheduling, because there are 6 sections of geometry and students could fit in any of them, and it's going to be the same thing. When you start adding honors classes, then it's not just put them in English, it's honors English or English. And so some of those things are parts of the puzzle too for us.
Anytime you create a singleton class like an honors or a low math, it creates scheduling issues. It pigeonholes your kids into one area, so that would actually be something to talk about just honors level programming. Yeah.
So, like when you talk about splitting band, varsity and a JV band or whatever, how does Mr. Burnside get enough time to do his lessons in there? Because that's a lot of students to get through his lessons.
That's why I think doing the 8-9 would be great, because he already comes over here and teaches 8th grade band.
Yeah. Okay.
I can see that.
So that's where I think, maybe I think it's
Logic,
because it was my idea, but
Okay.
it was, I just, as we were talking, I thought, well, what about this? You're already teaching 8th grade.
Yeah.
Why not bring them in with the 9th grade? All those kids come to the same concert anyway, and now it's just a matter of having them travel over. We already have high school kids traveling over here. 8th graders can handle going across the street too. So that's where that'd be the place. He'd still then, his schedule wouldn't change. He'd actually have more time because he would eliminate travel. If the travel was actually the 8th grade band kids coming over. Yeah. So, and that's just one idea. It's just something we had talked about if we ever go to 2 bands.
And our middle school kids, 5th through 8th grade, they're going across the road to the complex all the time in the fall and the spring for FIAD, so it certainly isn't unheard of for kids going across. And we're trying to promote that with our staff, that just because the space is at the middle school or the high school doesn't mean the elementary can't use it.
Side tangent too, if I may. It's been really fun watching teachers use those different spaces too. I talked about Mr. Reinberg, but I've seen things that teachers have been doing in the SOC, in the garage room, in the huddle. Just some really cool things that they've been doing as they try to explore it, and not having a huge definition of what it is. They'll say, well, can I do this in there? Yeah, try it. So it's been cool to see that. So thank you for supporting us doing that. And this isn't grade level either, but we had a PBIS committee from all over this Southwest metro area. They came in, and PBIS group came from all different schools and visited, just loved our buildings and loved what the way our buildings look and everything. So that's a compliment to Tim and to our students and our staff that take care of our buildings. So it was a nice little compliment. Questions about numbers anymore?
Thank
This
you.
was the
All right, thank you.
longest.
Yeah, but you came up next to me.
I wasn't going to. I got waved up.
Now, are you guys all glossed over?
Which one do you want me to open first, Chad?
Good question.
I'm guessing this one.
Yes.
You were going to say whatever I said.
I was. Really, I was. This could be probably confusing to you, but when I show it to special ed staff, they do get it. So, but basically, what I want you to really look at is what's in kind of the salmon pink color, because when you look at my executive summary, this is where I'm really looking at proposing the additional 1.0 FTE is the increases in our pull-out classes for our special education teachers in the area of specifically LD, and some OHD and some possible EBD too. But when you look at the increase in numbers, I want you to kind of look at the bottom and the peak numbers. When you look at what I projected, when I look at the end of the year, the wonderful world of special education is that you just don't know what happens. And so this year was kind of the first experience I've ever had with quite a large group of students that did come into our district with IEPs. So this means that our pull-out special education classes have increased. And at the elementary school, I have one pull-out group that has 12 students, and I have one at the middle school that has 11 students. And when you think about specialized instruction, that's a lot. And so, as you can see, at the elementary had 11 increased students really in that LD area, OHD area, and then same with the middle school had an increase of 8 students that were more in that OHD area and some ASD kiddos too. So, and then at the high school, we just have an overall increase of 2. So right now, when you compare to other districts our size, our high school is at a very good manageable caseloads. Our middle school is a little high when you look at just the level of needs, because we had a lot of students that moved in that are what are considered setting 3 students, which students who are need pull-out services more than 60% of their time. So there's in our special education classroom settings at least 60% or more. So that means the level of behaviors that we have at our middle school are increased, or just the needs. Could be sensory needs, it could be motor needs, it could be academic needs. So that is kind of where we see in the increase of needs at the middle school. And then at the elementary school, our LD population, we had a lot of students that come in with just really high learning disability needs. And so really what like I said, is you look at kind of the pink color, and that's kind of where we're sitting at. I also kind of gave you an overall projection by grade level too. And that kind of can, as you can see, when I look into the future, I really look at those transition students. So when you look at from 4th grade to, when I look into next year, I really look at what's going in from 4th grade to 5th grade, and what's moving in from 8th to 9th grade, and what is the graduating class. So, so when you kind of look at it, it kind of shifts about the same when you look at the kind of the needs from this year to next year. But again, I could have 43 students move in with IEPs next year. And that just tells you that of how great our staff are and what kind of programs and services we do provide here in Jordan. And that is, when I came in, we were known for the quality special education services, and we still have it. I mean, it shows right now with the families that are open enrolling or moving here into Jordan. So then you can probably, do you have any questions on this piece? Then I can go into my executive summary. So with my executive summary, I would like to propose a 1.0 FTE addition, just to help support our students with some co-teaching here because of our increase in our setting 3 type students. So that means we have to adjust some staffing here at the middle school, and then also looking at the high numbers of our pull-out classes with our 11 to 12 students. We would like to cut those into half, so we can at least provide those quality special education services for those students. And so when I look at the kind of the numbers and looking at the FTE, I'm proposing to have a 0.6 at the elementary school and a 0.4 at the middle school to help balance the workloads of our teachers here at the elementary and middle school. And then I kind of did the budget impact, and it was really nice because when we came in earlier this summer, before school started, we did one already, and it's basically about the same. So when you look at the 68% reimbursable costs, it would cost out the general fund about $27,237, and that's with the new teacher. And that's most likely probably what I'm going to find when I, especially this time of year, unfortunately. So, any questions on what I'm proposing and what I'm sharing?
2 questions.
Yeah.
Would this new hire be able to address IEP and speech students, or just one of it?
It would just, when I look at my speech, our speech numbers are very comparable to all districts in the area and how we are servicing. So when you go back to the other one, I have those slashes, so the number on the right-hand side of the slash is actually the students that they serve, and on the left hand is actually the students they case manage. And actually it was kind of funny when I was doing this, a lot of area directors were asking about workloads, and that means the number of students that they actually serve, and we are spot on with every district that is in our area with how many students we serve in the area of speech. So this 1.0 is going to mainly focus on our students that have the specific learning disabilities and some emotional behavior disorders, other health disabilities.
Why not 2 FTEs?
I would love to hire 2 FTEs, but honestly, when you look at increasing by 2 FTEs, then we're going back to when we look at our overall workloads, we will be servicing, be having the lowest. And so, which isn't a bad thing, but I honestly can't say that as an administrator going to you and saying that I want 2 FTEs and that would be utilizing our funds appropriately. But 2 FTEs would make our group sizes really at probably too small.
Well,
I know my staff.
The reason I say that is this is
yeah,
in the elementary and middle school we're probably more middle school, we're higher class sizes there.
mm-hmm.
I think the teachers are, they have a heavy load. If we had an FTE to help in their larger class sizes, that help lessen the burden on the teacher as well.
Yes, and we do actually have our 2 RTI teachers are actually coded 0.25 FTEs for special education, so that does help in that. So when you talk about, because we want to include our students into the mainstream, and so what is great at having both Tracy and Leah is that they are both former special education teachers of mine, and so when they went into RTI, that was kind of the best of both worlds, and so they actually are working directly with the students on IEPs in those co-taught classes in the mainstream setting.
Okay. So you'd still recommend just the 1?
I honestly recommend the 1, and I think you gotta, and what I do is I do what is called a workload analysis. So right now I'm gathering basically not just caseloads, because some of us do look at caseloads, but I do look at the overall workloads. And as the year progresses, I'll do another one in March. I might even move it up to February, depends on what is our enrollment numbers for students on IEPs, and that will give me the best estimation of what to look at when we're moving forward into the next school year. Yeah.
How soon do you think you need this, a full-time person? I mean, I'm assuming immediately, but I mean, how soon do you think that you can get somebody as well?
Well,
because that's a challenge at this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just following the process and looking at who we can find. The great thing, as you know, is with new tiered license systems, if we can get someone that's quality and we can hire them on a variance. We're going to do that. Yeah. We're going to get the best quality teacher that's going to work with our kids, and if we have to hire them on a variance, we'll hire them on a variance. I don't see us as having a problem finding a person, but I want to find the right person.
Right.
To be able to work with these kids. And the one thing that is a struggle is that when you do hire a person on a variance, it doesn't really decrease the amount of paperwork for our current special education teachers, because they're still going to have to be responsible for writing those IEPs, writing those evaluations. And like I said, it just depends on how many students are going to be referred through our intervention team process. And so, last year I think at the elementary school we had around 20 students that qualified for special education services at the elementary. And when you think about 20 students, that is a 1.0 on the FTE just for the elementary. But again, that's spread out through the different grade levels, and so it didn't quite even out when I was doing my projections to come to you as a school board and say I need a 1.0 FTE at the elementary school. It's always been to that, on that brink of coming to you and asking you, and now with the increase of students that came in and moved in or open enrolled, I'm at that point right now, which is a good thing.
So Chad, I understand that IP follows and then it's renewed on a yearly basis, and it's updated, quarterly or whatever as needed by the students. But as far as when the student first gets here, what's a time frame? Because I mean, I've seen IEPs that have been that's really intensive time-wise for the...
Are you talking about the amount of work that it takes to...
Well, I'm understanding when you're saying that we've had a record or an increased amount of students moving in with already established IEPs, does that take a long time to get the teachers then ready for those students?
You know, it does take some time, and like I said, the staff that we have they're phenomenal. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better special education department because they go above and beyond, and they prepare for the students that when they come in. It just depends on the level of needs. I mean, when you have a student that is a setting 3 student, it does take time because one, it depends on the level of need that they need. If it's behavioral, if it's sensory, if it's you know, it could be just an array of things. It could be students who might have more cognitive disabilities. So it just takes time for us to make sure they're acclimated to the environment, make sure we have the right equipment, the right resources for them to be successful. But our staff, they do a really good job of putting the time and doing the work and making sure that these students are ready the day one that they show up here at school.
So I'm guessing that will be an action item at the October 9th meeting?
Well, the hire will be. We've already posted.
Okay.
Actually, I was waiting to post it. I was waiting to post after tonight because I told Katie to wait a little bit because I wanted to get your feeling, and yeah, so after,
I mean,
if I get the thumbs up, then it's like it's one click to Katie and it's done.
so just one thing, like I know that you got a phenomenal staff. There's no doubt about it, right? And they're going above and beyond. I think my concern would be, are we overstretching them too much where we run the risk of, burnout, right? Where they just get overwhelmed and it happens, right? We're human. That naturally will happen. And if it's 2, let's talk about that. Like, you look at the amount of people coming in, we got to make sure we accommodate all students, right?
Yep. And when we look at, and when I look at what we've done so far, we've added an evaluation teacher. Having an evaluation teacher on staff does reduce the amount of workload. So that was one thing that I really appreciate you as school board is supporting us and making sure we hire at the middle school, but then adding an evaluation teacher on top of it to help reduce that workload. Adding another 1.0, even though it's a 0.6 and 0.4, that's going to help reduce their workload on the number of students that they are servicing within the day. Sure. So when you add the evaluation teacher and the 1.0, that is a 2.0.
Okay.
It is a 2.0.
That's a good point.
And so as we look at numbers as we move into next year, things will probably shift. I mean, the evaluation teacher might go back into the classroom, and we might need to have that person teaching versus being an evaluation teacher.
Sounds good.
So something we'll closely monitor.
Oh,
yep.
Yes,
I know you will.
Yep.
Good.
Any other
questions? Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all 5 of you, Amy too, for your presentations tonight. They were so informative and really help us as a board make good decisions and help us a lot. So thank you. And your presentations were very clear and understandable, all of you. So thank you.
Mine?
Yes, yours was too.
See that?
I told him it wasn't.
Oh, whoops. Okay, on to long-range facility plan update.
So I left this on here. I teetered back and forth of whether or not we show. We're not ready yet. I have all the sketches, so I know what they look like. It's fun. But I sent out a doodle poll today to our long-range facility planning team that met multiple times last year. And it looks like we're going to be meeting October 3rd if trend holds, and that's the date we're going to go with. And at that time, Chris from DLR Group will come down and we'll present the sketches associated with that long-range facility plan. We'll take the feedback from that group, and then the full board will get a chance to see it. So that's based off of the feedback from that group, and then also you as a board, we had a long work session last year in the spring. And our target was to be completed by November. So my goal is have this October 3rd session with the long-range facility planning team, and then on the, I think it's the 22nd, is that our work session? Somewhere about there. We'll present to you. That may be absent Chris. I know it's probably going to be absent Chris, but I will be able to share at that point.
20th.
20th. So it'll involve all of our campus, not just the new site, but also involve existing buildings and what those look like, existing athletic spaces, existing fine art spaces as well. So it'll be a big picture, long range plan, whatever long range means, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years. That's our goal.
Okay. Campus traffic and sidewalk safety.
It's a great segue from number 4, because really without long-range planning and moving into, and we're growing, obviously. I tell this story a lot. When I was teaching here from 2000 to 2006, our class sizes were 70 to 85 kids. You know, we have a 7th grade class of 190. We're growing. We're seeing an influx of open enrollments. This year, you know, we had our number and we went 50 beyond that number. So those are great things. But along with that comes increased traffic, both foot traffic, bicycle traffic, and car traffic. Obviously, our buses also have to adjust. Our bus company also has to adjust with that. So with that, I put some ideas together. It starts with a letter that Melissa sent home for JES families. Spent some time last week in the drop-off loop of our elementary school on that rainy morning, and it's always interesting the beginning of the year, no matter what you do, simply because our kindergartners are really little, and it's hard to get them out of car seats and hard to, you know, they get better as the year goes on, but the beginning of the year is always a challenge. It doesn't matter. It's just the way it is. So that will likely improve or increase, you know, efficiencies and the speed in which things happen. I'd also remind everybody that this is not unusual to Jordan. Transportation and drop-offs and pickups at most schools, public schools, is a challenge. And we have a number of families that do the drop-off pickup route. So Melissa sent home this little reminder you can see at the top for everyone who utilizes the back loop for dropping off and picking up students. We thank them for their patience as we start this year. This is something that goes home similarly every year. Just some reminders for families. Family and student signs went home last week. They were to be placed on the front passenger side of the dashboard or visor so supervisors can see which students need to get in each vehicle. That helps with speed and efficiency. Remain in vehicles during drop-off and pickup. Not everybody gets out of their vehicles, but we have a few. The day that I was there observing, it was the case. Practice buckling themselves in the car seat and unbuckling out of the car seat. That's also something that is important to do, and it also will increase the speed and efficiency. Being alert to traffic moving in the loop. We have some people that are on cell phones, and we need to make sure that they're paying attention and getting up as close as they can safely to that next vehicle ahead of them. And then the times, and that's always hard to enforce and hard for families to adhere to, and I understand that schedules are challenging, but we don't accept kids in the building until 7:45, and pick up, you know, it'd be ideal to not have people in that loop until 2:45. We have some that are in that loop at like 2 o'clock. So it presents some challenges. So Melissa sent these reminders home to try to encourage families to adhere to those guidelines.
Matt, can I add one, please?
Sure.
One of the other things that Jenna Wendorf and I are working on is because of the fact that we want to increase our preschool opportunities for families. That has added extra traffic in the back that we haven't had.
Why don't you come up, Melissa, so the camera can pick you up.
So when Jenna put together her survey for families for preschool programming, it was very loud and clear that they wanted more options as families. So when you do that, you're also looking at the capacity, once again, of your resources, not only your staffing resources, but you're also looking at your facility, you know, and how much of a capacity you're at with that. And I think what's hard is that we've tried to create those options for the sake of our kids and our families, but then that has a domino effect. And you know, I met with the Jordan Police Department and Tim Bezek last week to go through some of these pieces as far as moving forward, what are the next steps. I think part of it is the weather doesn't always cooperate, and that always brings in a huge factor that it's hard to, if you think about it as a parent, so if you're a walker and a biker, those kids are now getting picked up. If you're taking the bus and you don't want your child at the bus stop to walk home, you're picking them up. So I think it's a little bit of an anomaly the last couple of weeks where the 10 days we were in school, half of them were rain days. And so I think that the message was, let's let this kind of iron itself out. Here are some parameters that would really be helpful and mindful in addressing the resources and capacity that we're working at.
Yeah, with that volume, there is no way. I could sit here and talk till I'm blue in the face. We can't handle it with our infrastructure. We can't. Without spending $500,000 on additional loop infrastructure, which we just, in the previous bullet point, talked about long-range facility planning. If we're looking at future site development, you know, first of all, we don't have $500,000. So we would be asking voters to approve $500,000 of a Band-Aid, quite frankly. That loop just isn't big enough.
Well, and I think what happens too is I had spoke with a community member last week, new to Jordan, and was calling about Aberdeen. That, you know, the way that you enter and exit out of the back loop causes traffic issues on Aberdeen, let alone then if you look at the traffic coming out of the high school, out of the middle school, that also goes on to Aberdeen in the morning and afternoons. And that community member was great. You know, she was brainstorming with me some options. And I think what it kind of boiled down to was we have to look at some partnerships, not only with the Jordan Police Department, but with some city officials, and being able to talk through until we have more of a set plan for the long-range facilities of our district. There's some hiccups along the way that the community can help. I know as an admin team we talked, I was a parent this morning. I was off for a personal day moving into our house here in Jordan, and I dropped off my middle schooler this morning, and I avoided this corner like the plague. And it was just, that's I think anywhere you go, like, you know, I think Jeff brought up if he's going to Southdale, he's not going to take 494 midday because traffic's awful. And that's the other thing I talked with this community member about. There are certain times of the day that it's probably wise to choose an alternate route. Now, with her being new, she didn't know what that was, so I helped her out with that. But I think we just all need to be able to work together, because getting the message out to the community is also important.
Yep, and I think that's a great point, Melissa. I've used that same line. I said, this is, you know, our morning and afternoon, more so the morning, is our 494. It's just, I don't know how to solve it. We can do some things, and that's what these next bullet points are for, is to brainstorm ideas. I'm just going to share with you some things that we're looking at, not trying all at once, but they're possibilities. So we did talk about, as Melissa mentioned, administration, Benjamin Bus Company, Jordan Police Department, all its partnerships. One of the things we're talking about, and we're likely going to do next week, starting next week, this is an absolute, as at our high school, requires students, parents, visitors, and staff leaving that student athletic lot between 2:45 and 3:30 to go straight or take a right only. And we're going to re-sign it. So we've sketched some things out. It's a little tough to draw and put on a sign, but we're looking at just getting some cones and like extending that, the left lane coming out of the lot, extending cones out, that's your straight only. on the right side, it's a right only, you know, and right now, the right is right or straight, and the left is left, so we just wouldn't allow them to take a left. And that's, you know, just at the end of the day, we could extend it to the beginning of the day too, but that presents some challenges that we'll talk about here in a second. We think that that will reduce the amount of traffic crossing. It will, not we don't think, it will reduce the amount of traffic crossing that crosswalk area at the end of the day, which will hopefully alleviate some of that concern. I don't know what it'll do to the rest of the traffic, that's what we have to watch. At the elementary, we talked about requiring parents and guardians to take a right only out of the drop-off and pick-up loop onto Aberdeen Avenue. That's gonna make some people upset, but
It's necessary.
we could also go right in, right out. That would be a next level step. That's really gonna make people upset, because if you're on this side of town, you'd have to go along, you know, for example, you'd have to go down Hope or go out on 21 on 66 and loop around. But that would create flow, and it would reduce bottlenecking. It's not gonna make people happy, but you know, that's potential option there. You know, so it's all about trying to create directional flow and efficiency, and we could even do the high school thing in the morning as well. The problem with that is if you have a high school student and an elementary student,
Right.
you'd have to take a right, circle all the way around into the elementary loop. So there's challenges no matter what. And, you know, in terms of the police department, the partnership there, if we're pointing people, especially at the end of the day, if we're pointing students right or straight, that's going to put pressure on Triangle Lane. It's also going to put pressure on 21 and 66. Also problem spots in the community.
Problem spot, exactly.
So I really see this as not just a school issue, but an infrastructure issue within our community, and it's a direct result of growth. And it's only going to get more with the developments that are going in. So we're going to try some things. We're getting some cones. We're going to get some signage. We're going to just do process of elimination, just letting you know that you may get some calls, you might get some emails from people, because we have to do what we can do. We can't change infrastructure that dramatically. We can only change procedures. Safety patrol is going to start this week. They've been trained. They're kids. I mean, they're middle school kids. And Chief Empey and I are going to meet Wednesday. He's going to be officing out of the high school because Officer Otto has to be gone. We're going to brainstorm some more, and we're going to talk a little bit about assigning Officer Otto to that intersection, you know, as much as possible before and after school.
So where are the cones gonna go? Are they gonna go out into the road?
They'll extend
as much as you can.
Because if you're turning right out of the
Yeah, you can't,
elementary, you
yeah.
can't
No,
block that
no,
off.
yeah, we're just talking about the high school with the cones
but
first.
you still
Right, I know,
Right
but
here.
if the cones come out into the intersection and the
The
people
people
can
going
only turn
straight.
right out of the elementary, they
Yeah.
won't be able to get through there.
Right. Yeah, it's more of a high school solution.
But
the
even
other-
It
But-
basically just extends it into the crosswalk
Yeah.
at the high school. They wouldn't be able to go into the intersection because
Right.
yeah,
you'd mess up
because
traffic
yeah,
coming straight through.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can do it at the elementary too. It's just, you just have to, you don't go that far out. You just, it's training.
It's training the high
It's,
school.
it's
kids
just
to do
training.
it.
That, it's like a guide.
Yeah.
And it's a temporary deal until you get people used to the procedure.
I think also because of us, I think that the public won't necessarily, there'll be a few people that are upset, but these are little kids and this is all safety related.
It is a safety.
I
So
would hope.
I think I think they'll be open to it, and if it works, great. Who knows, it'll probably improve the flow of traffic.
So if you're coming here, will you be able to turn right to get into the circ between 245 and 330?
Yes.
Right
It's
turns
just-
work well. Left turns is what messes
It's,
stuff up.
it's just the volume of
Coming
traffic
across.
coming out of the high school at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we've got, whatever, I don't know how many kids, 100 and some kids coming out of the high school
Oh,
at
it's
the end of the
insane.
day.
And I'll tell you, the crossing out here, when you've got cars coming
Oh,
from every
it's-
direction, kids crossing that
Crazy.
intersection is,
And the morning is
Scary.
morning is worse than the afternoon, even though there's more kids in groups in the afternoon, that's why it's better in the afternoon, because you've got groups.
Groups,
In
true.
the morning, you have 2-3 kids at a
Yes.
time,
Right,
and
right.
especially this time of the year, they're on bicycles.
Mhm.
That makes it even more challenging, because you don't know where they're going, are they using the sidewalk with the bikes? It's an issue, for sure.
Yeah.
Could I ask, I had a phone call yesterday. So
On Sunday?
where does the bus, how far do they get bused? So right behind the elementary, are those all walkers?
Yes.
So everything across 169, they all have
County Road
the option
66.
of riding a bus.
Correct.
And that's, she was just making her point that they have the option to ride the bus for free. Why don't people get on the bus and
We
save
can't
the
force them to
hassle?
do it.
You know, well, she was just trying to make
I
that point.
agree with that
She
statement.
was making that point.
I agree.
That,
But I can't, there's
Right,
just no way to
right,
force them. And it's been brought up to me, well, it's not ideal because we double run Bridle Creek, for example.
they still get a ride here.
Right, but what we do is we pick up one group of kids and then we drop them off, and then we go back and pick up the next group. And that's an efficiency piece, because you have one driver, they get dropped off early, like whatever, 7:25, 7:30-ish, somewhere in there. So they have to wait, so that was the complaint, is you have to wait. Well, that's not unusual to Jordan, that's pretty normal.
Right.
I don't care what districts you go to. And we double run for efficiency purposes, because it's $40,000 a bus. Every route you add is 40 grand a year. So all of these things that we talked about tonight are about trying to be as efficient as possible, trying to be as safe as possible, and trying to provide the best service for kids as possible.
Thank you.
Thinking outside of the box, this may or may not be a good idea, but what if you revamped the back lot and got rid of the grass and moved the buses in the back and the cars in the front? Could you get more cars?
If you
Through the
add a
front loop?
parking lot, yep, but we're probably at $500,000.
Okay.
Because you have to, it's not as simple as
Right, it's not
it's
as
a
simple
great
as ripping
idea,
out the
but you have to
grass.
take up it's black dirt, it's clay, whatever. So you take up, I don't know how, they'll have to do soil correction. So you'll get down to a suitable type of soil. And then they'll add class 5. And then they'll pave it. So, I mean, literally, it's probably, when you think about this middle school lot, when we redid that, the mill and overlay was $350,000.
Okay.
Do we use that parking lot right across from Hope Church? Is that ours?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Is that full during the day? Do we park there at all, or do we leverage that for the high school students?
we don't.
We don't. Is there an opportunity there maybe where,
Kids park for free.
Get a
So,
half price.
I don't know,
Yeah.
something like that. It's,
Yeah,
it's
that's
le-
an idea.
It's probably inconvenient, and my kids would shoot me for saying it, but I mean, if it's a safety thing, it would be safer. You get a
Yeah.
lot of that traffic out.
And I think that's probably doable in the fall and winter.
Yes,
We don't plow the full lot in the winter though
Right.
either, so that would be, we'd have to plow it.
right.
In the spring, I suppose it's still doable. It's just, you run on a little overlap with games and stuff like that, softball
Right.
and baseball
It'd be
and track
really
and those types of
walking.
things.
It'd be walking.
Maybe
Hey,
a
it's-
That's
we're-
what's the benefit of driving if you're gonna walk
Well, I
that
mean,
far?
It's an
Park.
option. I mean, it's certainly,
It's that, or could you get them to exit out there? Could you get them from this
I
lot
thought
and make
about
it
that
so then
too.
you could path it out and get them out of there?
I thought about that too.
I mean, if we were gonna be in that building a long time, then I think you look at a Lauren type option too, and then you come
Right.
off
Yeah.
Aberdeen, kind of by the woods.
Right.
You'd have to put a culvert in, you have to put a
Oh, yeah.
turn lane in there, and you just create a longer loop. It just depends on how
And we
long we're
lose
gonna
the
be there.
Fields.
Yeah, we lose it.
Yep, you
Yeah,
would
right.
use
No.
the site there.
Don't do that.
And I think every field was used tonight,
Mhm.
Oh,
or something.
I know, right.
So it's some conversations we'll have to continue to have, and I think it's appropriate to have it when we have these long-range facility planning discussions.
Just a quick question about
Yeah.
the high school between 2:45 and, I'm just looking at the top bullet point, and 3:30. I feel, and just from my experience, but I'm not there every day, I feel like the traffic is gone by 3:15.
Yeah.
I was gonna say 3:15, I was
So-
gonna suggest that too.
Yeah.
And it won't make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
We'll pull the
3:30
cones,
is
whenever the
good.
cones get
Everybody
pulled.
goes out in like a 5-minute period. It's insane.
Whenever the cones get pulled, people are gonna do whatever they wanna do, so.
Yeah, that's true, it's true.
But Jeff and I talked about getting a letter similar to what was
Mhm.
sent over to the elementary for, and for the families, but also talking to the students in assembly that drive, that this is what we need you to do, and then we'll have adults out there training them along with the cones and some signage and stuff like that.
Can you get all those seniors on a last period senior priv so you can get half of them out of here?
It'll lighten up in the next 2 weeks when the seniors are in receive.
Yeah, when they start doing
The
it.
other thing, to your point, Jesse, we have offered kids that financially struggle.
Yep.
Said you're welcome to park down there,
Right.
and they somehow find the money.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
They all
I want to
walk.
walk that block.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's the same. It's somebody that works at Kids Co.
Mhm.
And she was parking in our student lot, driving out, wanted to get out of school early because she wanted to go
Mhm.
out of our lot and drive around to the elementary school. And we said, no, you will park your car right next to those stairs that go up, and you will be right there.
Right.
And you'll be walking right back. And it was, it's a mindset thing.
I get
Sure.
it.
I really think the straight and right
Right.
will work.
Okay.
I also think the other piece of it is it's not only our students, there's a lot of parents that come through there too.
Right.
And I know that parents have struggled with that intersection and turning left through the students. I think that's the biggest thing is there's a lot of kids crossing the street.
Yeah.
And if we can just avoid one more set of people turning across that, I mean, even the right hand is hard. It's just a bad intersection.
It is.
It just is because it's not square and it's awkward to see what other people are doing and,
Yeah.
And people don't always know the rules of the road in terms of, like, you come up to the stop sign, you see, okay, who all is there first, and then you
Right.
let them all go, and then you go. It's not that you come up to the stop sign, you stop, and then you just go. And I think that's an issue. Or that you just wait there and like, oh, okay, I'll just be here all day waiting for everybody else. No. So it's just, that's a matter of education as well, so.
And we did talk with, like I mentioned, the police department. He checked with the city engineer. There's no way to put a turn lane in on Aberdeen, like a dedicated
Yeah.
turn lane, because of,
It's county,
well,
right?
because of space. You have Oak Terrace on one side, and
Right.
you've got that sidewalk on the other side. So that's an issue. It really, I mean, I have to commend, I sent out a message to the elementary staff. It works as well as it possibly can. We're getting kids in and out of those cars as fast as possible. It runs as well as it possibly can with the infrastructure that we have.
I would think one of the ideas I was just thinking of is if you had a roundabout at both of those.
That's what I had
So it
suggested
wouldn't be a big
over
deal.
here.
You just loop around and head out and loop around, but it'd
Yeah.
have to be two of them, one
Yeah.
at Bridle Creek and the other
Yeah,
one here.
and you can take, and say it on camera, and I know some people have discovered this, but you could take a left at Oak Terrace there.
Yeah.
If you're coming out, take a right
The
out of the
gravel road.
elementary, take a left on that gravel, and takes you
Right.
back by the gravel pits back
Yeah.
there.
The other challenge is that because the elementary doesn't have a loading dock, that's why we shifted kid traffic to the back, is because we had our youngest kiddos often battling with schedules that we have no control of with delivering
Delivery
milk
trucks.
and bread and
Yep.
other things
Yep.
for lunch. So that took priority as far as the safety of those kids, was shifting the traffic pattern also due to that.
It's a puzzle.
Appreciate all the work in it.
Yep.
Yes, very much. And kudos to the staff in that torrential rain on Thursday for the job they did getting those kids safely in vehicles. So thank you to your staff.
I got to go shopping for a new pair of shoes.
I heard from a few people that Mrs. Barnett was out there in the tsunami with no coat and just out there getting kids in and out. So I had a couple people actually tell me that.
Great. Anything else on that? Any other thoughts? To be continued. We'll be anxious to hear how this pans out. Okay, legislative resolutions.
These are not in resolution format. Darren Kermis from Southwest Metro, the superintendent there, and I met on Friday, and we brainstormed. We had a number of things that we wanted to address, so that's what you see here. And we just wrote up a quick synopsis for all those. The hope is that between now and Friday, that those will be put into resolution form between the two of us, and then we'll get those to the school MSBA, and hopefully they'll take those on as legislative resolutions. You can see we have the fire alarm, which we talked extensively about last year. It made it into the education omnibus bill, which was then subsequently vetoed by the governor. will advocate for that passage. The bill to again make it to the omnibus bill and pass in 2019. Newspaper publication. This has been tried a number of times, but school districts are required to publish the minutes of their board meetings and other required notices in a local newspaper. You know, I hate to say it, Sarah, but readership of a paper print copy of the newspaper is at a low. We feel it's a way to help school districts save budget dollars. An alternative would be to post on district websites, so that's something that we're going to look at. The next one is New Beginnings. That is the pregnant teen program through Southwest Metro. It would be a resolution proposal to allow for pregnant teens to be transported via our special education vans and buses. Right now you can't because you get aid for those, so this would just allow us to do that. We have not empty, but we have room on these buses and vans. It just makes sense to allow ridership. The next one is near and dear to my heart. Billing out-of-state kids at the JAF. That's the juvenile alternative facility that we house here in Jordan, out by Scale. We had a situation last year, and I think a couple of you know about it, but a district from way in the northern part of Minnesota placed a student in the JAF. And upon being placed, in which Southwest Metro, we use Southwest Metro to provide educational services, but Jordan, our district, is responsible for all the tuition billing there. We get reimbursed most of the time. But on some instances, like this one, so a student is placed from outstate Minnesota, from northern Minnesota into the JAF, while at the JAF becomes a ward of the state. Therefore, Jordan is now considered the resident district under Minnesota statute. The student then gets placed, I believe, is in Missouri, and we get bills for literally $4,500 a month for this student who is being serviced in Missouri, and we are responsible to pay them.
Who's never resided in Jordan.
Never.
Who's never, right.
So why isn't the placing district the home district after?
Because the Minnesota statute says that if they become a ward of the state and you're, while being housed in a facility that resides within your district boundaries, you're responsible. So that's what this is about, is try to get that language changed.
I feel like, sorry. I feel like we had an issue with a JAF a few years ago when we brought a resolution, and was that because it was out of state?
Passed. That was the reverse, I think. Were you here then, Chad? We had a resolution about 4 or 5 years ago.
I think it was even longer.
I don't recall that.
I think it was when Kirk
Maybe
was
it was
here.
before, yeah.
I think because Kirk wrote it.
But that did pass, I remember.
It did, but I think when I heard you explain it, I think that was only for kids who came from out of state.
Out of state.
Not necessarily from in our state,
Right.
but from out of state.
Right.
So that
it was
affected
kind
that.
of the reverse of this.
Yes, but this is different.
We sent, I don't know, it was probably 6, 8 emails back and forth between this district that placed them, the state of Minnesota, and us. We just battled it. And eventually we just said, white flag, you know, we're not going to win this, because the state kept sending us, this is the statute, you're on the hook. And it's just not right. The next one is equity debt relief. I've been pounding on this one for a few years. It's simply also unfair that we as a property poor district, and what I mean by that is we just have 0 commercial industrial land, or we have very little, we don't have 0. So we're considered a property poor district. I participated in a call with the Office of the Legislative Auditor right at the beginning of the school year, along with several other schools. Forest Lake was one, Castle Manorville was another. We're all kind of those bedroom communities, you know, for families that are going into Rochester, going into the Twin Cities. We just have very low property wealth, and that means that the local homeowner takes the hit when you pass a bond referendum like we did to build this building. So there needs to be change there. Quite frankly, there needs to be change with the entire Minnesota funding system. Because as you've seen over the last 6, 8 months, you know, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You've got districts that are $1,500, $1,600, $2,200 per pupil unit, and we're stuck at $724. And because of this, there's no way that we're gonna pass an excess operating levy, or we think it's gonna be very difficult to do. So it just creates this inequitable system. So equity debt relief would be one way to help districts like ours potentially sell an operating referendum, because you get some relief from that debt load. The next one is renew the innovative mental health grant, and we just support the Southwest Metro in this. This does support us, and it supports those mental health services that we obtain from Southwest Metro here in our district. So we support that. And then the other one is the Level 4 Professional Development Grant. And basically this is a safety issue. It allows us to obtain funding, or Southwest Metro Intermediate District to obtain funding for training to help with all those staff who work with Level 4 high need students. And that results in less injuries for students and staff just because of the nature of those kids. So we do support Southwest Metro in their effort to retain that funding. So I think that's a good list. Now it's just a matter of getting it in resolution form and getting it submitted to MSBA.
So how this works is, the deadline is Friday. Sandy's very aware of this. We are, by the way, looking for a delegate to replace Mary Romansky. So it would be finishing out her term. So it would be a matter of attending pre-delegate assembly meeting in November. It's usually around Thanksgiving, the week before something. And then
my calendar.
delegate assembly is the first Friday and night and Saturday in December. It's when delegates from across the whole state actually vote on the resolutions that are brought forward. So how this works is typically MSBA likes when full boards approve the resolutions moving on, and even though these aren't in resolution form, I would kind of just like a consensus from the board so that I can go to them and say, our board does support these and feels, feels these are valid resolutions. So what happens then is the MSBA board goes through the resolutions and they compare it with our current platform. And if there's duplications or if there's current platform issues that are worded better or whatever, but having looked at these are all pretty unique. And I think all of these would be pretty much standalone resolutions that would have a very good chance of moving forward to the delegate assembly. So
I'm just going to add that the one in St. Paul is on November 17th, which is a Saturday at 8:45. But it looks like there's also a webinar available.
They are going to do it by webinar this year also. Okay. If you came there. And what they do at pre-delegate assembly is basically they go through all of the resolutions that are going to be voted on at delegate assembly, and they just kind of go through the pros and cons of it. It's not the time to debate. We don't debate it. The debate happens actually at delegate assembly, and it can get pretty heated and pretty interesting. Very much so.
Last year, not so much, but the year before, definitely.
Because it's really interesting to see the diverse needs from across the whole state. Yes. So if it's okay with everybody, if everybody's in agreement that these are good resolutions, then I'll just share that at the MSBA board table. So, and thank you to you and Darren for coming up with these. These are very much needed, especially the new beginning ones really gives me, because there's a lot, and I'll pass these around, but there's a lot of students, pregnant teens, that are in need of services and could benefit from new beginnings, and they don't have any way to get there. So, which is really sad. So. Any questions about any of these resolutions?
Just one additional comment on the equity debt relief.
Yep.
That there needs to be something in place, because that commercial tax dollars, they're going to start going away as the physical footprint continues to shrink, right? So there's all the online revenue that's happening. There needs to be a long-term plan for the state of Minnesota to figure that out. I mean, you just look at what's happening, right? Who shops online? We all do. Yeah. Right. It's just growing and growing and growing. So there needs to be something there.
You think about, I've used this example, Jesse, that when Shakopee passed their bond referendum to build their high school and do some different improvements, that was $110 to $120 million, I believe, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think so. I think it was.
Our project, this project, was $35 million. Same tax impact on a $200,000 home.
Yeah.
And that shows you the inequity. If that doesn't, that's a perfect example right there.
Yep. Well, they land like something like a Amazon that's got how many million square feet footprint.
Yep.
How much of a tax impact that helps defray that cost among the residents.
And likewise, you know, the Wayzatas, the Minnetonkas, the very property-rich districts, they can ask for an operating levy. I mean, those districts are 17, they're like $2,000 per pupil unit.
Right.
So more than, almost triple what ours is, almost triple. Do those kids deserve that much more than our kids?
No.
It's just not fair.
No.
It just, because of their zip code and because they can go out and pass it, it's just, you know, I'm not a socialist, but I can tell you one thing, that would be something where I would advocate for in terms of reform.
Yep.
I call it the Robin Hood theory.
Yeah. Yep.
Enough said. Right, good. Okay.
There you go.
Anything else? Good, thank you. Okay, that is the end of our workshop session. Before we move into the special session, I'm going to pass this around for everybody to sign. Most of you, probably except, well, Jesse, you might even know of her. Grace Kelleher, she's our government relations person for MSBA. She presents it, she's a redhead that presents at most of our things. Good friend of Tiff's, they were like this. Mid-50s, her husband, we were actually, Sandy and I,
We were there.
we were at advocacy in St. Peter at the home office on Wednesday night last week. And Grace was the presenter, and that night, during the night, her husband died in his sleep, very unexpectedly,
You're kidding.
very unexpectedly. So I want to send a card from our whole board. If admin, well, admin is pretty much gone, but if anybody wants to sign it, we'll send that to her, so. And then the other thing is, this is a book, I got one for each of you from Southwest Metro. It is incredibly well done, and it gives a really, really good overlay of what a Southwest Metro is and the vast number of offerings that they have, from just everything from their career tech to their crisis, their mental health programs, their day treatment programs. So good tool for all of us to have to see, you know, we support them, they're part of us, so I think it's good for all of us to know that. And one last thing, yes.
Could I just do a Southwest Metro? My grandson Tyler will be getting his All-American Award at Indiana this year, and I believe it's maybe one of the only Jordan High School graduates with the FFA. He'll be getting his All-American, so he's quite excited.
That is
He had to
awesome.
do a 5-year plan, and he succeeded in his plan, so thank you for allowing our students to get to go, because that was a dream of his. So he'll get to walk across the stage and become an All-American FFA member. So
That is
through Southwest
awesome.
Metro.
That is awesome. And on that same note, the Southwest Metro hosts a gala, and it goes to benefit scholarships for our kids, to help our kids to participate in different things that they have. The gala is Friday, October 5th, and it's at Hazeltine, and it is a blast. They have hundreds of silent auction items. This year the theme is a golf theme, so people, if they want to, can dress in golf attire. They have a fantastic dinner catered by Hazeltine. You don't have to, you can dress gala style, whatever, it's open. But if anybody is interested, Myron and I are going. It's $140 a couple, $75 an individual. We would love to have you join our table. They have guest speaker, they have live auction. It's just a first class night. So if anybody is interested in going to that, let me know. It is fun, isn't it?
It is.
It's a great night.
October 5th, you said?
Yes. It's a Friday night.
See that.
Friday night, October 5th. Starts at 5:30, dinner at 7.
I always want to go to it. It's just not in my husband's wheelhouse. But you said golf
But
attire?
you don't have to.
You said golf attire. The dude wears shorts and a golf shirt to work every day.
There you go.
That might
He's
work
set.
for him.
There you
He
go.
wears it like
I was thinking Payne
religiously.
Stewart style.
So was I, like knickers and that,
That's
the
right.
hat.
I was thinking Happy Gilmore style.
Hockey shirt?
And a hockey stick.
That'd be awesome.
That would be.
Actually. All right.
I gotta go use.
Seriously, if anybody is interested, just shoot me an email. It's a great night.
I
Okay.
see Ann is waiting in our audience,
Yes,
so
I know.
I appreciate you waiting, Ann.
Okay, so I am going to call the special meeting of Monday, September 24th to order at 7 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chair notes that all members are present except Rob, who's actually out of the country. Consideration of the agenda. It's a special meeting, so there cannot be any changes to the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved.
Sandy, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Rob. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consent items, we have resignation of community ed assistant, administrative assistant Carly Vanderpoot, and new hire Jenny Kuski, and contracted employee school psychologist Patrick Garrity.
Yes.
Pardon? Garrity, thank you. And that is a special purchase agreement with Southwest? No. Private, okay. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the consent items.
Motion to approve.
Tom, is there a second?
Second.
Lauren?
Lauren.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Review and act on, would anyone be opposed to letting Ann move up? Would that be okay? I know it's not kosher on the agenda, but
That's fine.
Ann's been here waiting for a while. So if it's okay, I'm going to move 6.6 up to 6.1 with everybody's permission, so that we can review and act on the Indian Education Program Plan. Thank you for putting up with our long meeting.
I'm gonna let Ann, who is our American Indian Education Council Chair, and just kind of do a brief overview of the plan that we wrote this year and the funds that we received from the Department of Education and where those funds are gonna go. So I'm gonna give it to Ann.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me here. It's an honor, and I want to reiterate from last year that, you know, our district is ahead of the curve in getting the parent committee organized and a really well consolidated plan, and even being invited to the school board to speak to you. So just want to say that we're on track, or we're above where other districts are on that. We went through in detail with the plan last year, so I was just going to do an overview of it this year, and then, you know, we can open it up for questions. It's not a lot different, although, you know, there's a few initiatives that, you know, specifically that we've tried to build each year. We kind of had an idea that we would have about 5 years of building our program, of knowing what the needs of our students were and what we would do to meet those needs. So if we could go to the goal area 1.
Okay.
So goal area 1, if you look at the goal for that, first of all, the area is entitled All American Indian Children Ready for School. And down to the 2018-19 goal, basically what we did last year is we started tutoring students who were not in line to meet standards. Our goal was to get more students to meet the MCA scores of meet or exceeds. And we had 2 students last year who are in our program, and in the coming year, we would like to have from 2 students to 8 students participating in after-school tutoring. And generally those students were elementary age last year, although it is open to all ages. So in the strategies for the goal achievement, the Jordan School District will provide tutoring opportunities for all 52 identified American Indian students in grades K through 12. And then just skipping down partway into that paragraph, we will also include a district equity specialist and culturally responsive teacher group led by Sarah Miller to reach out to identified students regarding after-school support. And then we also have some cultural events that we use just to build relationships with the students. So our big one is the horse camp, and then we're working on a black ash basket event, and then possibly into next year, because we do have more students this year, we will do a sweat lodge camp. So for that budget, in this area, we have $4,000 just because we'll be working with tutoring and the transportation for those students. Goal area 2. All third graders achieve grade level literacy. The goal there is we have 10 students this year, so that was an increase from last year. I think we had maybe 3 last year. We want to look at their literacy scores from fall to spring. So based on the NWEA tests, we want the students that are identified as American Indian to have 65% of those in grade 3 at or above proficiency. So some of our strategies for that, we're looking at using a district equity specialist, and we would like the specialist to meet with teachers and students in small groups at that third grade level and provide culturally sensitive and appropriate activities for those students. So it's just kind of building of belongingness and community and just creating relationships for students. And what we're looking at is that we would like our students to be used to working with teachers and the equity specialist before we have a problem. So starting in the elementary ages, so they're developing that relationship. So that budget in that area then was $5,100, and the bulk of that budget is for the equity specialist. Goal area 3. That's for all achievement gaps closed for American Indian students. So the goal there is that we have, the data we have in the fall, at this point for our students, we tried to get more specific on that so we could come up with good numbers. We had 11 students meeting or exceeding MCA in math and reading during the 17-18 school year. And for the coming school year of 2018 to 2019, we would like to have 16 students meet or exceed the district's MCA state assessments. So some of the strategies for that, some of these are overlapping the different areas. It's not just a strict, we do this one thing in this area and this over here. It's very overlapping. So we are going to be working again with doing the activities with the students. So you'll see that listed again at in the strategies paragraph toward the bottom, same as we did last year. And the other thing that we have identified that we need to be doing is having culturally responsive teams and coaching so that the teachers can utilize some of the materials that we've purchased in other years. So we did a lot of purchasing of literature for each grade level or for each school essentially, so they each have kind of a little resource library that's dedicated. It can be used by our American Indian students, and it can be used also in the classroom so that there's more of an integration of the curriculum. And so we would just like a little bit of a, well, and there has been ongoing training and coaching in that area, but we would like a little bit of follow-up on that year to year. And so that is part of our budget for this year. And that would include in the budget cultural speakers and then the activities that I pointed out previously. And then goal area 4, all students attain career and college readiness. So the first goal area of the under the 2018 one, I don't know, are we on the right?
Yep.
Sorry, I can't see it well. Okay. So during the 2018-2019 school year, 100% of American Indian students in the Jordan District will reach benchmark on the ACT plan and college readiness assessments. The district will continue to support any student wanting or needing to take the ACT exam, and that would be actually supplemental. So if they would want to retake the ACT exam, because they do already take an exam with the school district. But if there was other need in that area, we would provide the funding there. And then we also would provide the funding for PSAT for our students specifically, if the family would need reimbursement for something like that. And then we're also developing the folders that will be given to students. You know, we're mainly working with high school age. We've discussed using these folders once we kind of get rolling, even in the middle school age groups, so parents are really up and aware on, you know, what they want their students being prepared for whatever their career path might be. And then the other strategy that we have to achieve this goal, we have several strategies, but one of the main strategies will be the equity specialist meeting with the students and advising them, and then presenting them with the information in the folders. And then we would also be reimbursing parents for doing their own college visits with our students. And we have guidelines on how that reimbursement can work. And that is in, it's in supplement to the fact that we don't live near a tribal college, for example, which students would typically go on field trips to tribal colleges. If they were near something like that, we don't have that opportunity. So our $6,000, the bulk of that budget, again, is going to be for reimbursement. Goal area 5, all students graduate from high school. So if we skip down to the goal there, last year we had one senior, one American Indian senior, and as the information that I have, I think it's one student again this year. So our goal is to have 100% graduation rate, and we are achieving that. And honestly, our students are, you know, they're testing very well. We're finding, you know, our younger students, you know, there is a little bit of a gap there in the reading and math, and, you know, as we see it now, their needs are being met with the tutoring and the services that we offer. So that's why we're kind of getting down to the real specific numbers now, because it seems kind of silly, some of the percentages that are given out in a lot of reports. And so we say, okay, well, how many third graders do we have? You know, we have 10, so we want to work on that group. And then back to the strategies for that final goal achievement. Again, it's going to be some work with the equity specialist, meeting with our students, and then just the folders again, which we allotted for in the budget in the previous goal area. And then the budget breakdown in this area, the bulk of those funds is to reimbursed for any type of test taking or test prep. And it could be for college or other career readiness.
Any questions on the plan? Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that I'm not 100% sure, but I think they don't do the ACT plan anymore. Isn't it the pre-ACT now? And goal 4. I just wanted to, I didn't catch that when we were going over it in our meeting, but isn't that correct, Matt? We don't take the plan test in for the, it doesn't exist. It's the pre-ACT.
Yeah. The only, and along that same line, I thought I caught a number on goal area 2. just a discrepancy.
Yeah, I think she said 5,100.
Yeah, you said
when it
5,100
was
and it's
3,400.
When we,
Oh, you're right.
because
Okay.
I think you have.
You're right. I have the non-updated form in print here.
Is this one correct?
Yep,
Okay.
that
Okay,
one's correct.
okay, thank you, I was gonna ask that
I'm
too.
sorry, the rest of that shifted to goal area 5.
Yes, you're correct.
I'd like just to, I mean, I sit in and so does Sandy. Like to commend Ann. And also Chad. I mean, there's, I think, Ann, you paid a nice compliment. We do really, I think, have a good group. We're working hard to establish a plan that meets the needs of our students. And we have dedicated individuals that attend those meetings and are working hard for the kids. So commend. Thank you to you, Ann, and Chad, for also facilitating on behalf of the district. So.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And I probably should have started off by saying that our money from this year is allocated from our student numbers from last year, which we had 20 students, which is, it's pretty micro small, it's 1%. And then our student population from this year is 52. So we'll take a little bump in the numbers in the students that we're going to be servicing. And we will get a little bump in the funds that we receive for next year as well.
And just for the board's purpose, and not all, the guideline of the threshold, and correct me if I'm wrong, is districts that have 10, a minimum threshold of 10, 20.
And it depends on where you're going here. 10 is the threshold for formation of a parent council, and 20 is the threshold for this specific state grant. So there's other monies out there, which are, I mean, they're all federal funds, but this specifically, the grant was written through the state, so we call it a state grant. This one specifically, we need 20 to receive it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Lauren?
Last year's numbers were 20 and this year's numbers is 52, so is it all primarily elementary?
Yeah, early childhood and elementary, big increase.
Thank you.
And it's also how they, in both
Report.
process too, is
Right.
basically how they are reported through enrollment too. And so we find students who are also American Indian, they're not reporting themselves as American Indian in enrollment and vice versa too. So because the American Indian does not just mean Native American, it means Eskimo and
Pacific Islander.
Pacific, yes. So, yeah.
And I know the state is changing
Yes.
some reporting
Right.
guidelines too. They're going to the federal guidelines when you're reporting on the attendance or on the student information system. So the state was very limiting on how, when parents checked specific boxes, the federal is more open. So it allows you to have multiple ethnicities. Does that summarize it?
It does, but then that creates more problems for us because a lot of us are multiracial.
Yeah.
So what box do you check? And then the previous reporting was done on the students' tests, and so we put the burden of the box checking on the students. So, and that's not likely to change, but we can work in our district to make sure that we are filling out additional forms, like a federal 506 form, to get our numbers corrected.
Great. Any other questions? If not, this is an action item, so I'll entertain a motion to act on the American Indian Education Program Plan as was presented to us.
So moved.
Sandy, is there a second?
Go ahead.
Second.
Jesse, okay. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, moving back up to 6.1, review and act on the new hire and job description for the community ed director, Steve Jensen.
I can certainly go into any questions that you might have, but with every new hire, we do review the job description. And we also create a contract that meets the candidates' qualifications and things like that. We are very fortunate, I believe, to hire a new community ed director who has a license. I had a conversation with the Board of School Administrators in case that wasn't the case, but we ended up hiring a candidate who we think is going to do a great job. A number of you were on the hiring team and can speak to that, but currently comes to us from Burnsville as a coordinator, and I think is going to be a really nice fit for Jordan. His personality, I think, is going to fit well. So I recommend approval of this new job description and the contract for the new director.
Okay, we'll take those as separate items. The job description, it was tweaked a little.
Yes.
To reflect some of the changes that we're doing.
Correct.
For efficiency purposes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the job description.
Move to approve.
Tom, is there a second?
Second.
Jesse? Okay, questions, discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now to review and act on the contract for Steve Jensen for 2018 through 2020. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Sandy? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Tom? Okay, discussion?
Is this what was in the plan, the number,
What's that?
in the budget? Is this the budgeted amount?
Yes.
Good.
Trying to keep things in line with
Right.
that level.
So all of our
Okay.
directors are literally within $1,000 of each other.
Perfect.
And we've done a lot of work to have the contract language, Tom is aware of this, to contract language to clarify it and make it more uniform between the different levels. So. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Review and act on the contract change in job description for the Early Learning Services Director. That would be Jenna Wendorf.
So just really briefly a note with this one. This came as a result of the resignation of Mary Otto as a coordinator for Kids Company, or school age care. We didn't replace Mary with another coordinator. We shifted responsibility to Jenna. Jenna has been serving as a director of early learning, or a coordinator for early learning services, meaning the ECFE, ECSE programming. She has an administrative license. She is a licensed special services director. So it made sense to shift that responsibility to her and really pair that out. So she will be the early learning services director and take on both school age care, which is our Kids Company program, and ECFE, ECSE. She will then be dropping the school psych hat, which is why you review and act on the contract agreement with the private individual to take on some of those services.
Got it.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion, then we can discuss. This is for the, it's backwards, I guess, but for the contract.
Motion to approve?
Jesse, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Connie? Okay, discussion?
On the contract or the description?
We're on the contract.
Okay.
Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now I'll entertain a motion on the job description.
So moved.
Tom? Is there a second?
Second.
Jesse? Discussion?
I just have a question. Was the Kids Co-coordinator, was that a full-time position previously?
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
So is there gonna be some restructuring then for support, because if she's doing, basically then,
Yeah, we're looking at increasing administrative assistant time.
okay,
It's currently 10 months. We're looking at a 12-month, but I think it's doable.
okay.
Just with some of the efficiencies that we're going to be able to build in, just understanding the billing process and modernizing that a little bit,
Okay.
for lack of a better
Mhm.
term.
Yep.
We also are, we posted for a second assistant coordinator, we call it. So we have a a PM assistant coordinator right now within Kids Company.
Okay,
We posted for a second one to do the AM side,
okay.
so that would be an additional staffing
Okay.
piece. Good question.
Because I was just thinking
Mhm.
that's
Yeah, that's
Yep.
a big.
a lot
And that would
of
be
time to
primarily,
have to-
yeah, primarily to take on the burden of, like the staffing call-ins in the morning and the afternoon, but then also keeping track of kids, you know, because we have a number of parents call in and
Mhm.
it changes from day to day, those student levels, depending on the weather, sometimes depending on what the family has going on in their day.
Okay.
Well, and Matt, also that contract's just 1 year. We would usually do a 2-year.
Mhm.
You want to elaborate?
Yeah.
That was kind of a trial thing to make sure that this
Correct.
workload is feasible.
Yeah.
So
That's-
for both this one and the next one that you'll review and act on with the activities director, they're both through June 30th. Both wanted the opportunity to review workload, but also Jenna in particular wanted the opportunity to go back to her previous job if it was too much for her in her life. So I think that's honorable. You know, we didn't know what we were going to get with a director either. We didn't know if we were going to get somebody licensed. We didn't know if we'd get somebody with experience in
Right.
ECFE or, so I think there's that piece as well.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the job description for the Early Learning Services Director signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and act on the contract change for the Activities Director, Joe Perkles' position.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve his contract. Is there a second?
Second.
Jesse, discussion?
Matt, this one does say 2 years. Is that correct?
No,
Oh, yeah.
It's
It
not.
does say 2020 on here, yeah.
it's wrong and that's wrong.
Just so the top sentence, we just have to change that 2018.
It should be
Right, good catch.
July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
And I think it's only in the top, but I didn't
Right,
look
it's
down.
only in the
Very
top.
top.
I didn't
the
look
very
to see
top
if it's
paragraph,
down
I
farther.
think,
down.
that needs to be
On one,
corrected.
where it says notation salary and benefits for November 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019.
That should be 2019.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's okay.
So,
Yeah.
but just so you
Yep.
see that.
Just make sure it's not.
It's
anywhere
right
else.
here.
Yes,
That's the only
right,
spot that's right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll entertain there is a motion and a second with just correcting the
Amending that.
dates,
On the
okay?
date, yep.
Amending the dates. Okay, any more discussion?
It's good otherwise.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now now the job description. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Sandy, is there a second?
Second.
Jesse? Okay, discussion? I just think this is gonna streamline things and make for a lot more efficiency with facility use and scheduling, and
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a great idea, so,
Yeah. Agreed.
okay. Motion and a second, any more discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and act on community ed and rec administrative assistant job description.
Move to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Second.
Jesse, okay. Discussion?
Will you put
Is
a
this-
name with this one? This is what Carly was doing.
Correct.
So this is the one that we'll be hiring for.
Yes.
Thank you, that was my same question.
Can I just add a note here,
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair? Today I made a executive decision and I moved Jamie Fremming into this as a temporary role. So I informed Andrea Schock in Nutritional Services that we'll be pulling Jamie out of the kitchen and she'll have to have subs. I know that Jamie is interested, you know, and we'll have an application process because this will have to be posted. We have the next job description that you're review and act on also that's just posted. So she may have interest in those positions and she may get consideration for those. But in the interim, you already acted on the facility scheduling piece and approved her through October. I just went ahead and just made it full-time in community ed right now because we need some help.
Understandable.
Carly's last day is Friday, so we're down to one
Yeah.
full-time employee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve that job description. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, review and act on the community ed and rec coordinator job description.
And this is Andy Nolan's current position.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion, is there a second?
Second?
Second, Jesse, okay. Questions, discussion?
What changed on it? It wasn't hers already, did something change on it?
Yes, there were. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what they were, but I reviewed all of them and just made some slight adjustments on all of them.
Some of it was the youth programming, I think it was, with hers.
Yep, and I think these will be probably 2 job descriptions we review and act on again.
Okay.
As our director gets involved.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we talked about today, we had a meeting, and obviously these were already published. One of the things we talked about today is that new administrative assistant position, taking on more of the role of CERC memberships, scheduling CERC front desk staff, maintaining or at least monitoring equipment for maintenance, and taking on more of that CERC role as part of the job, the other part serving as the administrative assistant for the entire community ed department. So that would then take Andy and her coordinator role out of that CERC role and have her focus more on coordinating as we go from 2 coordinators down to 1. But we also shifted a lot of duties away. We shifted some of that ECFE kids company duty away.
Mm-hmm.
We also shifted some of the facility scheduling, a majority of the facility scheduling away. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. I think it's a matter of testing it out over the rest of the year.
So, can I ask, how many rec helpers are there then?
Rec helpers,
Well,
Like Tom Vogt position?
I don't know, I mean, like,
Part-time
who
staff?
helps sets up games and all that, because that's impossible
So
for
we've
this person to do.
last week we posted for site supervisors,
Okay.
and we hope to get as many as possible. I mean, it'd be
Okay.
nice to get 20.
Okay.
And then train them all, and the idea is we're gonna just do some simple flip phones, like have a couple, 3, 4 flip phones, and the site supervisor will check in.
Wait, I think we're not talking the same language. You're talking building supervisors.
Yep.
I'm talking people that set up fields and stuff like that. That's not a building supervisor. Is it, or is that what you're making them
We
the
have
same
never
person?
had them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's really split between the director, the coordinator, the administrative assistant. They've all in past have taken turns, and then we also have positions like the youth football coordinator, and that's been a long-standing position. Jason Allen once did it, now Jeff Malik does it. That's a big setup,
Oh, yeah.
take down one. Coaches help a lot. It's just, it runs a little differently, and I think that's something that we want evaluated and how we move forward with that. But we do want to increase our site supervisors too.
Mhm.
And that kind of goes along with the facility scheduling process.
Safety, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve that job description as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Adjourn.
We are adjourned.
Girls beat Omaha West Tonga for the first time.
Wow, good.
Yay!
One